We want to make it possible for parties to receive on qualified public and private blockchains any asset that's in DTCC's inventory. So that's all roughly $90 trillion worth of our assets. We're racing to actually bring that to production. We expect it much sooner than any of you think.
What the technology effectively does, it connects traditional ledgers, public chains, private chains, and can connect to any external network such as FIX and SWIFT and so on in order to orchestrate complex transactions. What that means is two things. One, it enables the market to scale. So basically, DTCC does not have to integrate separately with each partner. They can just integrate once with the router, and then as long as the other parties have a thin P2P router, they can immediately come in. So it means you can deploy multiple solutions in one go and just scale it across the market. The second thing is it can also scale across applications. So
but to Ami's point about the super app, what you can see is any kind of asset, crypto, cash, public or private securities are being used in this process for transactions that settle in seconds. So this is a radical new way to run your back and middle office as a bank. Along the way, we added Ami and team to the mix. So, first challenge is actually come, integrate with an app chain and move out. They did that very quickly. So we threw another challenge. All right, let's see if you can bring Canton into the mix as a distributed ledger. We'd like to move some value from Canton in. Sure enough, a couple weeks later, he had that. All right, so what about some other distributed ledgers? So it was very easy for us to add, and we did, a lot of additional challenges to the mix. And then we started moving up the level of complexity in terms of transactions. So they performed fabulously well.
What we're going to show today connects to some things we heard in the industry. We heard Larry Fink talking about all assets and equities and bonds will be tokenized. We heard the chairman of the SEC talking about the super app that will allow people to trade security alongside non-security effectively in a wallet. Dan, do you want to give us a few words about the collateral mobility experiment?
Yes, but first a few words about this venue. This is unbelievable. What a great view. What a great audience. This is really going on. I must say I've been in this industry for 10 years. Nothing like this. Really, we are at that tipping point where every institution is now digging in, rushing in headlong into the tokenization space, and we do have the right regulatory environment. So, perfect timing. DTCC just did the great Collateral experiment. We came together with market participants globally, so CSDs, custodians, tri-party agents, buy-side and sell-side components, and ran an experiment representing roughly 70% of the world's value to show collateral mobility. And what we were able to do is settle collateral transactions in about 5 seconds across markets, across tri-party agents, across custodians. So we're really excited about that component. We did this through something called Launchpad. This is a place where we bring the industry in order to do real-world collaboration, not for the purpose of doing a demonstration, but as the first step to production, and we're going to talk a little bit more about where we're going. We ran through real-world scenarios. So a day in the life of collateral operators. We worked for several months with the best collateral practitioners from many of your institutions, worked out what the hard problems were, and we solved them. We brought in best-in-class technology providers from industry, gave them a couple months to get everything together, and then we rolled out this experiment. It's really amazing what was able to come together as quickly as it did. I think you'll be impressed with the end results.
Thank you. So what we're going to see today is basically a demo that has 3 parts to it. The first part is how we can take an asset that is launched in a traditional market, just an Apple share, and convert it instantly into a tokenized version of that asset. So again, think about all the assets around DTCC, and we'll talk about it in a minute. So that's number 1.
Yeah, let me stop you there. So that's the conversion order is one of those substantial underpinnings. So this is what DTCC is up to right now after the experiment. We want to make it possible for parties to receive on qualified public and private blockchains any asset that's in DTCC's inventory. So that's all roughly $90 trillion worth of our assets. We're racing to actually bring that to production. We expect it much sooner than any of you think, so that when you want to engage in transactions like these, you can. You simply pass in a conversion order, move to token form, and then move back again to traditional form.
So the second demo, after we've moved the money to tokenize, why do we move it to tokenized version? We're going to do two things with it. One, we're going to do an after-hour, effectively 24/7 sale of the share in tokenized form, but not a wrapped version by a third party with third-party risk. Actual share within DTCC is going to transfer from a seller to a buyer at the source within seconds. So that's the second thing we're going to do, show how 24/7 can happen, a real use case is going to come. And then we're going to take the buyer who actually bought the asset, will actually use the asset as collateral. They will borrow money against this asset in an intraday repo process, basically selling the asset and getting cash for it, and then a few minutes later, we'll do the opposite, where they sell back the cash and get the asset back. So we're going to show conversion, we're going to show the 24/7 trading, instant settlement, and we're going to show use as collateral that can be used in multiple ways. But before we jumped in, question to you, how real is it? I mean, we're going to show a demonstration, of course, but how real do you think this is?
This is quite real. So the demonstration you're going to see here, not real value, but real smart contracts, real chains, real movement of value. This was built on a mock of DTC's core accounting systems, the DTC proper, ATP, for those who are in the know. So it's there. We're now taking and moving from mock to real to allow this to roll to production. So this is real stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, so the role of Ownera, just to explain what it is that we do within this process. Ownera provides FinP2P routers. FinP2P is an open protocol for interconnectivity between different participants. In the original experiment, we showed how we moved assets from Finality to the Collateral network, how we move assets from Canton and back, how we move assets from Circle, USDC, and so on. What the technology effectively does, it connects traditional ledgers, public chains, private chains, and can connect to any external network such as FIX and SWIFT and so on in order to orchestrate complex transactions. What that means is two things. One, it enables the market to scale. So basically, DTCC does not have to integrate separately with each partner. They can just integrate once with the router, and then as long as the other parties have a FinP2P router, they can immediately come in. So it means you can deploy multiple solutions in one go and just scale it across the market. The second thing is it can also scale across applications. So you do one application for 24/7, and then it works for everybody. You launch the next day the application for securities lending. Again, it will work for everybody. You don't have to go and revisit all your API connectivity. So that's real scale in the market. So without further ado, let's jump in and see what we can see here. Yuval, if you can share the screen. And I'm hoping we can see it on the big screen as well. Yeah. So what we're seeing here is the asset conversion. I see it here. You see it on the big screen. This is the DTCC asset conversion mechanism. You can see the various tabs on the top, BNY, Euroclear, Canton, Finality. As long as the other party has a FinP2P router, we can add more and more of those. So it's very easy to convert between any ledger to any other ledger. Specifically here, we're focusing on the DTCC traditional ledger, which is an Apple share that was bought in the market, and now we want to convert it from off-chain to on-chain. And you can see that actually before we had a view of how much the user had before on-chain and off-chain. So now we're going to convert 400 shares from traditional to, remember we started here with 600 on-chain, so we're supposed to finish with 1,000 on-chain. And now you can see you have 1,000 on-chain, you have 400 less on the traditional ledger, and the total remains exactly the same. So these are just two ways for DTCC to hold the asset. It can be in the traditional ledger, it can be the digital ledger. For all intended purposes, it's the same, only the digital ledger has all the advantages of instant settlement.
So behind the scenes, what's happening in this conversion flow is the value is actually moving from the DTC custody, the participant's DTC custody account to a control account. The tokens are then being issued and delivered. So what the party is actually holding is a digital twin against that DTC holding.
We're moving on to, to the next demonstration, which is basically for the client that actually received the asset in digital form is now putting on an offer to sell it to the next client. So now he's trying to sell 1,000 shares of Apple. We're doing something interesting here. The payment mechanism is a stable coin. So we're going to show a traditional asset moved to digital asset on the platform, and you can see now that the client published an indication of interest to sell 1,000 shares for 200 shares each. Okay? Now we can go to another client, and that other client is basically wanting to buy the asset. They can see that the asset is available for sale. So I'm going to click, they're going to click the buy button to buy the asset, choose Circle as the payment mechanism, and execute the trade. What's happening now is basically a DVP between the share on DTCC and Circle being paid online. You can see there's something called an execution plan that starts with holding the asset for the DVP at the DTCC side. Then there's going to be a transfer of the cash on the public ledger from the buyer to the seller. And when this is done, we're going to see the release of the asset to the new holder. And you can see that it's now finished. If you now went to the to Ethereum, we'll probably see the trade happening there. So this is a process. And when this is done, you will see basically a settlement within 2 or 3 seconds of a trade of Apple after hours. So here it is. We achieved a use case of 24/7 trading with instant settlement, and the transaction is done. So this is the second use case that we have to present. And we can see another use case, which is in this case, the use case for creating a repo. In this case, the client that actually bought the asset wants to borrow money against it. So we're setting up an intraday repo for just a few minutes. And when the transaction is going to end, we are going to see 2 legs of a repo transaction, which is one leg, the money moving from the lender to the borrower, and the asset moving from the borrower to the lender, waiting for maturity, and then we'll see everything going in the opposite direction and finishing the transaction. So you can see now that the client has to basically put several Apple shares. It takes a few seconds for the transaction to actually finish. And when the transaction is finished, you can now see the Collateral smart contract created on the Collateral management system. And that's the Collateral platform that you've created.
That's right. So this interface happens to be factory. This was designed, again, working with collateral practitioners from across the industry to do real-world collateral management. Now, most trades are not 4-minute trades. It's incredibly cool that you can actually do a repo trade and have use the cash for 4 minutes and then basically complete the repurchase. Most are overnight. The same collateral process can be used for bilateral agreements, like a FX forward contract that can last months. When that's out, parties actually have to swap the collateral, do substitutions, there'll be margin calls, et cetera. All of that's automated through this Web3 platform. But to Ami's point about the super app, what you can see is any kind of asset, crypto, cash, public or private securities are being used in this process for transactions that settle in seconds. So this is a radical new way to run your back and middle office as a bank using distributed ledgers and lightweight UIs. And I think the repo, is it done? Not done yet.
Yes, and what you can see next is the execution plan for the repo. The first leg was finished, and the second leg will take effect any second. And when it is done, we're going to go basically on the repo on the other side. Okay? So effectively what we've done is just to kind of repeat. There's the three things that we demoed are quite significant. The first, the ability to convert. What does the ability to convert means? It means that you can take the $99 trillion worth of assets that sit on DTCC and over time make them all available for treatment as tokenized assets. This was not possible before. Every time that we talked in this industry about tokenization, we talked about private market, we talked about fund. Public shares were kind of somewhere at the end of over the horizon, and suddenly, with the leadership of the DTCC, we're seeing it happening much faster than expected, which we think will be a killer application that might pull the entire market behind it. That's one thing that we're seeing. And the interesting thing about the collateral mobility application is that it's not only about DTCC assets, but the collateral platform can take assets from other sources as well, right?
That's right, that's right. The other participants, we had Asian market CSDs, European market CSDs participating, so it's really any asset globally.
So effectively what the FinP2P network enables here is movement of collateral and asset between any ledger and any ledger, and movement of transactions and execution of transaction and finality of transaction in real time. So that's the big thing. And then we're talking about the use cases. The use cases, for example, 24/7 is use cases that enabled through the fact that settlement is instant, right? So that's a use case that's very interesting. But the big story is collateral mobility.
Yeah. April 9th of this year, many of you know, markets were massively volatile. On that day, we did almost $20 trillion worth of transactions at DTCC based on the volatility of markets that day. That would have 10, definitely 20 years ago, crashed the markets to have that kind of load. Banks not being able to adjust collateral on a highly volatile day can cost as much as $100 million to a bank for not being able to optimally move their collateral. That easily justifies blockchain investments. And so that's a fundamentally different story now for financial institutions. It wasn't the business case even a year ago.
Yeah, so let's bring the story back to the SEC's famous now super app. What does it mean? It means that a client can hold through a wallet assets that are non-securities, assets that are securities that are public, assets that are securities that are private. Within the private could be different types of securities and different use cases and flows.
Pokemon cards?
Sorry, Pokemon cards, if you will. And then you can also use your Pokemon cards as collateral and borrow against them, or more likely your $100 million of Apple shares. So, yeah, and I think that it goes beyond that, because when you're talking about Apex, Peter was here earlier, when you're talking about Apex managing $4 trillion worth of private assets, a lot of these private assets are funds. Now, when these are tokenized, they go to the same flow through the same FinP2P network, to the same super application that that you've seen before, that we've deployed in Europe and now deploying in the US as well. And now you can take also those assets and use them as collateral. So not only using public shares as collateral and bonds and so on, and basket and HQLAS and so on, but also using your real estate holdings
Sure.
as collateral.
If you can price it, if you can haircut it, it's eligible.
Yeah. And I think that, there was a lot of discussion here, and I heard people talking maybe from the viewpoint of the last few years, where as an industry we were struggling to get to production. And sometimes you don't see when the light suddenly appears. And it looks like with the SEC this year, and with the work that we've been doing together in the industry over the last 3 or 4 years to get ready, it looks like the stars are aligned.
I think so.
If somebody wants to connect to the DTCC platform and they have a FinP2P router, what else do they need in order to connect?
Yeah, Ami's been modest. So we started really heavy work on the collateral experiment in January with the April 23rd date of showing. And by the way, it is available for anyone who wants to see it. Along the way, we added Ami and team to the mix. So, first challenge is actually come, integrate with an app chain and move out. They did that very quickly. So we threw another challenge. All right, let's see if you can bring Canton into the mix as a distributed ledger. We'd like to move some value from Canton in. Sure enough, a couple weeks later, he had that. All right, so what about some other distributed ledgers? So it was very easy for us to add, and we did, a lot of additional challenges to the mix. And then we started moving up the level of complexity in terms of transactions. So they performed fabulously well in this Collateral experiment. That, coupled with the power of an app chain and really sophisticated smart contracts, automatic pricing, we really have something new and different here that can fundamentally change the markets.